This is Lauren Dunlap, Executive Director for Advocacy and Awareness for Immune Disorders Association, or AAIDA, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am so pleased to host today's webinar. AAIDA's mission is to create awareness, advocate, and conduct research to help the greater than 25 million Americans living with immune disorders. We are excited to be presenting AAIDA's second webinar of 12 for 2021. And today I will be joined by Dr. Emily Hatcher, who will present Supporting Immunity and Heart Health, a holistic approach during Heart Health Awareness Month. Dr. Hatcher is a board-certified naturopathic doctor and owner of Bloom Naturopathic Wellness in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she helps her clients find and address the root cause to their immune issues, women's health, and gastrointestinal concerns. Dr. Hatcher is passionate about educating and empowering her clients so that they have the tools to create a healthier, happier life for themselves and their families. Dr. Hatcher received her undergraduate degree from Benedictine University and her doctorate from National University of Health Sciences, both located just outside of Chicago, and consults with clients all over the U.S. Dr. Hatcher, we are so pleased to have you for today's webinar.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for that introduction. And can you guys hear me okay?
They're on mute.
Can you hear me okay?
If everybody can hear Dr. Hatcher okay, if you don't mind, you can type that in the box. We were having some sound issues earlier. Yes, got some yeses here, Dr. Hatcher, so you are good.
Okay,
thank you,
perfect.
audience,
Thank you
for that.
So I am really excited to be talking about how to take a holistic approach in really preventing heart disease. So when we start to talk about the underlying imbalances that can be present and really drive that disease process in heart disease specifically, we're also really going to be talking about a lot of different strategies that you can be using to help to support your immune health as well, because it really is so interconnected. So when we take that really holistic approach, these different strategies can be applied to other areas as well. So
Dr. Hatcher.
can you
Dr.
hear me
Hatcher?
now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So let me go back in here.
Sorry about that hiccup.
That's okay. Okay, so for our disclaimer, we are providing this webinar information for educational purposes only. It is not meant to diagnose or treat medical conditions. It's not a replacement for medical care. You should always consult with your licensed healthcare provider before making any nutritional or lifestyle changes. So we will be talking about general recommendations at the end of today's webinar, but it's really important that you make sure that these changes are right for you before incorporating them into your daily routine. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about what naturopathic medicine is. Naturopathic medicine is a distinct primary healthcare profession emphasizing prevention, treatment, and optimal health through the use of therapeutic methods and substances that encourage individuals' inherent self-healing process. So as naturopathic doctors, we are able to practice primary care in certain states in the United States, but our focus really is to encourage your body to do what it was meant to do, which is heal itself. And so we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the role that this is going to play in heart disease. So the therapeutic order is another strategy that we use when looking at a person from a holistic standpoint. If you look at the bottom of this pyramid here, we have establishing the foundation for optimal health. And so that is going to include, if you look over to the left, the determinants of health, determinants of health essentially are what you're putting in and what you're surrounding your body with. So that is going to be nutrition, hydration, lifestyle, stress management, all those good things. If those are not quite where they need to be, we may not have that optimal foundation for health. And so we are really going to focus on that when we talk about nutritional and lifestyle changes that we can make to support heart health today. So in terms of what a holistic approach to heart health is, we really don't just look at the heart or the cardiovascular system as being on an island by itself, right? It is in our body. It interacts with all other organs and organ systems, and it's also influenced by external factors in our environment as well. So we are not looking at the cardiovascular system as an isolated organ system today. We really are looking at it as working very closely to maintain balance with other parts of our body in spite of many different stressors or changes that we experience on a day-to-day basis. So the main things that we are really going to focus on in terms of how to look at the underlying imbalances that might be present for heart disease is going to be the immune system, stress, and blood sugar balance that can either turn into a vicious cycle or a very supportive cycle and can either promote or prevent heart disease. So we're going to come back to this graphic a few times throughout this webinar today, and this is really just starting to show how these things are going to affect one another and how they're going to affect not just heart health, but the health of our entire body, including our immune system as well. So like I had mentioned before, this can definitely be applied to a lot of other health concerns as well. So if we start with that chronic inflammation down at the right-hand side, chronic inflammation is going to cause stress on our body. That chronic stress response can influence our blood sugar balance, and then that chronic blood sugar imbalance can contribute to chronic inflammation. And so when we look at this, we don't have to have all three of them in place for it to start throwing things out of balance, right? Maybe we've got great blood sugar balance. Maybe we've got, we don't have that chronic inflammatory picture, but maybe we do have some bigger stressors in our life. Maybe we've got, a really stressful job. Maybe we have a stressful home life. Maybe we just live in 2020 and 2021 with a global pandemic and everything else that's been going on for the last year or so. So if we are not managing, for example, this chronic stress that might be present, even though other things are in place, eventually the changes that stress or those stressors make internally over time are going to push or can push our blood sugar and our inflammation kind of over into that chronic imbalance state. So really balancing the three of these and sort of what comes with those, which we'll get into a little bit more, is going to really be the key here, because once again, everything is so connected. So if one thing is out of balance for a certain period of time, eventually it's going to kind of push everything else out of balance as well. So when we talk about what heart disease is a broad category, and underneath that umbrella, there are a bunch of different diagnoses. So, there definitely are aspects of heart disease that are maybe more genetic in nature, or maybe, you're born with some congenital heart issues or whatever that might look like. We're not so focused on those today. What we're really focused on is our main forms of heart disease that are largely considered diseases of lifestyle, meaning that the stress, the inflammation, the nutrition, maybe some, a lot of stress, all this different stuff is going to contribute to them. It truly is how we live our lives. And so while it is so prevalent in our country, the good news is that if it is a disease of lifestyle, we do have some control over how we can actually be actively preventing diseases like these on a day-to-day basis. So I just want to give you guys a few facts from the CDC website. These aren't always super exciting, but I do think that it just kind of hits home how serious and how prevalent heart disease is in the United States specifically. So heart disease is the leading cause of death for men, women, and people of most racial and ethnic groups in the United States. One person dies every 36 seconds in the United States from cardiovascular disease. About 655,000 Americans die from heart disease each year. So that's 1 in every 4 deaths is contributed to heart disease. So, you know, this is big. I think that almost everyone listening, I would be surprised if there was anyone here listening that has not been affected by heart disease, whether it was a friend or family member, or maybe even you personally. So heart disease, in specifically February as Heart Awareness Month, is probably one of my favorite times to do educational webinars like this, because it is really something that has affected all of us. So many forms of heart disease can be prevented or treated with healthy lifestyle interventions. The causes of heart disease graphic that we see here just kind of spells out some of the different causes and risk factors and things like that. So we've got diabetes, diet, aging, genetics, lifestyle, gender, and smoking that are included. And you guys can go back and read up a little bit more on these, or we can shift back and ask some questions about those if you guys do, but we'll really be focusing on diet, lifestyle, and not specifically diabetes today, but the blood sugar aspect that drives that inflammation is definitely a big factor there as well. So if we think back to that graphic where we've got blood sugar imbalances causing inflammation, causing stress, and so on and so forth, in that vicious cycle, we're going to start with inflammation. So when we talk about what inflammation is today, we are essentially going to be referring to chronic inflammation. So inflammation in general is actually a life-saving response of our immune system. So anytime that you hear of inflammation or whatever that might be, our immune system actually regulates and produces those inflammatory cells. So when we look at our inflammatory immune response, this is essentially how we stay alive. This is how we actually regulate that self-healing process. This is how we repair tissue. So if you look at this picture on the right-hand side, you can see that, we've got a little cut here. So when you cut yourself, it turns red, you feel a little bit of pain, maybe there's some pus that shows up, it scabs up. That is all the action of your immune system. So without that immune response, we would not live. I mean, there's just no way that we would survive. So inflammation is a really important part of our survival mechanisms and our self-healing mechanisms, but it is not meant to be used for long periods of time in response to excessive and chronic things that cause inflammation. So over time, what happens is this inflammation can actually start to work less optimally than it should, and that really impairs our ability to be able to heal our own tissues or organ systems or whatever it might be that we're trying to heal. So that is really what's referred to as chronic inflammation. And so this chronic inflammatory process, at the end of the day, is really going to be the basis for all disease. So whether you're looking at heart disease, whether you're talking about autoimmune conditions, whether you're talking about cancer, whether you're talking about anything, that chronic inflammatory process is there. It is the basis for it. But the question is, where is that inflammation actually coming from? So that's what we're going to get into a little bit more. This is just, once again, kind of stating chronic inflammation is the underlying driving factor for every chronic disease. This perpetual state of inflammation prevents the body's ability to heal the affected tissue, organ, or gland over time. So the role that inflammation plays in heart health is huge. It truly is a very hot inflammatory fire that is present over a long period of time that causes those various types of heart disease. This is taken from the Harvard Health website, and it says that chronic inflammation is important to heart health because it plays a pivotal role in the development of atherosclerosis, the buildup of fatty cholesterol-rich plaque inside of the arteries. Inflammation is the silent fire that is the basis for the development of cardiovascular disease, and chronic stress and blood sugar imbalances are both major causes of inflammation in the cardiovascular system. So now that we've kind of gone over, you know, the basics of inflammation and how that chronic inflammation can kind of drive this, we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about how blood sugar and chronic stress can contribute to this as well. So blood sugar and heart disease. I want to give you guys just a little bit of a rundown about how blood sugar imbalances, so excessive blood, so high blood sugar levels, or if you have blood sugar surges. So depending on what you're eating, meaning maybe you are not considered to be, you know, pre-diabetic or diabetic, but the things that you're eating are very high in refined sugars or, you know, starchy carbohydrates like white potatoes or corn, or, you know, a lot of grains. The bulk of your diet is something that is very high in carbohydrates or very high in sugar. You can also experience a lot of blood sugar surges, meaning that your blood sugar spikes really quickly and really high, and then it's going to drop really quickly depending on what you're eating. So when we talk about blood sugar imbalances, we're not always talking about an actual blood sugar related disease. We can also be talking about just in a suboptimal, you know, blood sugar fluctuations that can still drive this inflammatory process and may still put you at a higher risk for developing something like heart disease. So we use sugar for energy, quite simply put. So when we eat food, what happens is we absorb, you know, the carbohydrates or the sugar that's in our food, and we turn it into energy in our cells. And so in order to get that fuel, that sugar to our whole body, we put that sugar into our bloodstream, and that's how it can travel through and get to the different tissues that need it to continue working and keep our body, you know, living and breathing. So when we are unable to pull enough sugar out of the bloodstream, our blood sugar levels become elevated, right? So if we can't get that blood sugar out of our bloodstream, that increases our blood sugar levels. So when we have this process going on for a long period of time, essentially what happens is we have chronic blood sugar imbalances, whether that's always high or we have those blood sugar surges, once again, which I had mentioned before. And that excessive blood sugar present in our blood vessels is actually very damaging to the blood vessel wall. So it really is going to drive that inflammatory response. And once again, that's the job of our immune system. So it's going to mount that persistent inflammatory response to try to repair that damaged blood vessel from that high blood sugar. But if that blood sugar remains high, we're going to still have that perpetual cycle of damage, attempt to repair that by the immune system, and so on and so forth. So this is actually what causes that atherosclerotic, or that plaque formation that we hear about. That is one of the, you know, that is definitely present in heart disease. So just to kind of recap what we just talked about, this graphic is really helpful. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see that we have the normal human artery. So those little green dots are little pieces of glucose or sugar. And you can see that the blood vessel is nice and healthy, it's nice and clear, we don't have any issues. But if we look over on the right-hand side, we actually have what a blood vessel might look like in a heart disease, an individual that has heart disease. So essentially, you can see that you've got more of these green glucose or sugar molecules. So that's showing us that we have that chronic elevated blood sugar condition. And what this has done on the bottom part of that is it started to damage that blood vessel wall. So as our immune system, if you look down where it says macrophages transformed into foam cells, a macrophage is an immune cell. That's what we actually deploy when we are presented with this inflammatory cycle. And so essentially our immune system is trying to repair that damage, but there's always more damage being done. So this plaque builds up, and that is essentially how we get ourselves into this heart disease state there. So we'll kind of get back to blood sugar a little bit more toward the end, but the next part to our vicious or supportive cycle that we have is stress and our stress response. So when we talk about the stress response, what we are talking about is our ability to adapt to any stressful situation, whether it's good stress or bad stress. So we are activating what's called our fight or flight nervous system in most of these cases. And the fight or flight nervous system is really only meant to be active for short periods of time, right? So if we talk about like the ancestral purpose for this, when we were hunter-gatherers, you know, you kind of turn on that fight or flight response when maybe you're hunting large game for a short period of time, or there's kind of that typical saying, like, you know, being chased by a bear through the woods. So we don't really have that anymore in our modern day society, but what we do have is really very fast-paced lives, very high stress lives. And so a lot of us do have this fight or flight nervous system response turned on all the time. So what that does internally is it actually it makes our body, that fight or flight nervous response tells our body to release these stress hormones. And what those stress hormones do is it tells the rest of our body that we are in fight or flight mode. We need to change the way that we're functioning so that we can survive. And so a part of this is actually to raise our blood sugar, which we know is a risk factor for heart disease. And it also increases our blood sugar, which we know is also another risk factor for heart disease. So once again, that response is meant to be short-lived, but with our, you know, modern day society, that is turned on quite often for a long periods of time, or some of us, you know, may have even had this turned on for the majority of our lives. So healthy stress management practices we'll get into a little bit later, but unhealthy stress management practices that can also be considered risk factors for heart disease are unhealthy diet, smoking, and alcohol use. So these are all going to contribute to the physical stress on our system, but that mental emotional stress response in response to something like a stressful job is really going to do the same thing from a physiological standpoint when talking about stress hormones. So it is really important to address both the physical and mental emotional stress management aspects of this as well. So what is stress? And I sort of already gave this away a little bit, but stress is the nonspecific response of the body to any demand for change. So once again, when we talk about stress, a lot of times we think about that mental emotional stress, but really make sure that you're also thinking about that physical stress. What kind of physical stress are you putting on your system as well? So here is a really good graphic for all the different types of stress that we can be under, whether it's physical or whether it's mental emotional. So we've got environmental toxins, we've got air pollution, water pollution, sunlight, you know, these emotional troubles, we've got relationships, childhood trauma, media overload, nutritional, we've got physical, which physical is good to note that that is actually too little or too much, right? We really, for most things, want a good balance. So you can be putting physical stress on yourself if you're sedentary, if you don't really have a lot of movement, you don't practice any kind of you know, workout routine, whatever that might look like for you. But intense exercise is also considered a physical stressor as well. So, you know, my mind goes to those people who do like, you know, Ironman competitions, or they're elite athletes, or Maybe they are just your typical non-athlete who is trying to get in shape and is really just working out too hard and isn't recovering well from exercise or different workouts either. And so those are definitely both considered physical. So we want a good balance there. And then we've also got the financial aspect over here as well. So I'm sure there could be a whole bunch more added to this, but this is kind of the different types of stress that we can have on our systems from a day-to-day basis. So the main organ that is going to secrete our stress hormones are the adrenal glands. So these are two little glands that both sit on top of each one of our kidneys, and they have different layers that secrete different hormones. So in response to stress, the things that they're actually going to influence and change are all these things listed here. So they're going to influence blood sugar levels. They'll influence blood pressure. They will influence our sex hormones, and they actually produce sex hormones to a certain extent. They will influence our cholesterol levels. They influence the immune system and the inflammatory response. So that's definitely coming back up there. The sleep-wake cycle, that, cortisol and melatonin really govern our sleep-wake cycle, and then also our electrolyte balance to a certain extent as well. So when we talk about the effects that chronic stress has on our system with these different stress hormones that maybe we're always pumping out in response to that constant fight or flight nervous system response, the health issues that we can get from chronic stress are honestly endless, because these really do affect everything. So here, this is definitely not an exhaustive list, and there's a lot of things missing here, but the results of prolonged stress can definitely contribute to any and all of these conditions. And so in order to really focus on harnessing that good, healthy stress response, stress management is definitely going to be a big, big, big risk reducer for heart disease. So here we are back to this graphic here. So we've got our chronic inflammation that we discussed. We've gone through our chronic blood sugar imbalance, and then we just finished up with chronic stress. So when we talk about all of those different imbalances, a lot of the things that we can do on a day-to-day basis are actually really going to support getting those things back into balance. So healthy nutrition and lifestyle habits support blood sugar balance, a healthy inflammatory response, and a healthy stress response. So we're actually going to transition over into some of the different nutritional and lifestyle strategies that we can start to look into and start to adopt in our everyday life, so that we can really focus on disease prevention. And these are going to be more focused on heart disease, understandably, because that's what this entire webinar is about. But I also really want you all to remember that these nutritional and lifestyle general recommendations can really contribute to preventing so many other diseases, because when we really look at that underlying driving factor in most chronic disease, it is inflammation. So all of these things that we're doing are helping to prevent inflammation, and therefore prevent most of our chronic disease. So just another note on some of these nutritional and lifestyle changes is that I cannot stress enough how important individualized nutrition and lifestyle changes are. Everyone has different nutritional needs. They respond to different foods differently. They have different access to different foods. They've got, so many different factors in this. So these are very general, but I would definitely encourage you to work with somebody who knows your health history and knows what you need as an individual, and start there so that you can kind of get the best individualized care. Otherwise, this is a great place to start with these recommendations. So when we focus on food, we really want to start looking at food as medicine. So anything that we're putting in our body, how is that benefiting our health? Are most of the things that you're eating more in that detrimental to health category, or are most of the things that you're eating really beneficial to health? So first and foremost, I really like to talk about rethinking your macronutrients. So traditionally, our macronutrients are protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So we are actually going to focus more on protein, fat, and fiber. So we've replaced carbohydrate with fiber. And the reason for that is because when we really talk about balancing blood sugar through nutrition, we want to take out that large category of carbohydrates that's going to spike our blood sugar levels and contribute to some of those blood sugar imbalances, drive that inflammation, and really drive that stress response, and so on and so forth. So fiber is found in different carbohydrate foods, but the ones that we really want to focus on are going to be our non-starchy vegetables, our fruits, and our legumes. So these are definitely things that are not going to spike blood sugar levels as fast and as high as things like refined sugars, a lot of our processed foods, a lot of our grains, and things like that. So rethinking macronutrients and really balancing out your meals is going to be super important. And then we also want to minimize processed foods, inflammatory foods, and food sensitivities, which is definitely going to be very individualized to each person. We want to minimize artificial sweeteners, caffeine, and alcohol. All of these things are going to drive that inflammatory process. They're going to, change our blood sugar balance, and they're going to put more stress on our system as well. So I added this slide into this heart health webinar presentation because we are, I think a lot of you that are here today probably have some sort of immune concern, or maybe you have a family member who has an immune concern. So when we talk about inflammatory foods for those in that maybe autoimmune category or immune disorder category, gluten is going to be a big driver of inflammation, and it is really one of the big foods in how we specifically process it in the United States that can actually contribute to autoimmunity development and progression. So gluten itself is a protein that's found in certain grains. So it can be found in wheat, barley, or rye, for example. And the way that we process in the United States, we make it so that our immune system is going to recognize that and as almost like an invader. Like, if you have a virus that comes in and isn't supposed to be there, your immune system recognizes that as a foreign invader, and it mounts an immune response, and it attacks it, and it makes antibodies toward it. Well, the way that we process gluten in the United States, our immune system can have that exact same response to it. And so when we're constantly eating gluten, that systemic inflammatory response is definitely going to be there all the time. It's going to turn into that chronic inflammatory cycle, and that can really lead to other issues and really just lead to our body's inability to be able to heal itself. So here we've got some products that contain gluten. So these grains listed here, we've got a lot of food additives and preservatives, malt products, so like malt powder, malt vinegar, malt, different things in that category. A lot of condiments and dressings have gluten in them as well. They use them in pharmaceutical binders and fillers, and they are in quite a few personal care products. So if you are someone who does have gluten concerns, or you're thinking about eliminating gluten because of, whatever it may be, then this is definitely a good place to start here in terms of where to start looking for some of those hidden gluten-containing products. So the other thing about high quality protein that I had listed on the previous slide is that we really want to focus on high quality. So when we look at animal protein, for instance, the quality of the meat that you're eating, or even the eggs that you're eating, for instance, is going to be really important. It completely changes the inflammatory or anti-inflammatory profile of that meat and the benefit that you're actually getting from that food. So when we look at conventionally raised meat, they are fed grains. The grain feeding process, what they eat, right? We've all heard that saying before. So when you have an animal that eats grains, the fat content in their muscles and the meat that we end up consuming is actually going to be really high in omega-6s, which is a type of fat, and really low in omega-3s. So that ratio, really high omega-6, really low omega-3, is actually going to be very pro-inflammatory. It's really going to encourage inflammation in our system. So when we look on the other side at our grass-fed, pasture-raised meats, those animals, while they're growing, are eating grasses, they're eating seeds, they're eating things that they are essentially supposed to eat, free roaming. And so what happens to that fat profile in their meat is that it's going to be much lower in omega-6s and much higher in omega-3s, which is actually going to have more of an anti-inflammatory effect when we consume those different fats. And so those can be very, very supportive for that, that inflammation picture that we've got here. And then, so we've talked about kind of rethinking macronutrients. We've talked about a couple of things to avoid. We've talked about quality of foods is really important to really kind of harness those anti-inflammatory benefits. And then this balancing your plate, this graphic is actually taken from a book that is called The Mediterranean Zone. If you guys are interested in learning more about this stuff, I would highly recommend it. It's a great read. It's a quick read, and it makes things very, very simple. So the balancing your plate is really going to help you balance your blood sugar through nutrition. So if you look at this graphic, we've got 2/3 of our plate are non-starchy vegetables and small amounts of fruit. And then we've got the 1/3 protein. So if you're looking at different protein sources, always remember your quality. They can definitely still be plant-based as well. If that's something that you prefer, you can do a mixture of both. Your protein serving size is generally about the size of your palm. So you can see that hand-eye method. And then you want to add in some good healthy fat. So it's going to be like your olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, olives. You know, if you can tolerate eggs, a good high quality free-range egg is going to have that good fat in the yolk, etc. So balancing your plate at your meals during the day like this is going to really, really support blood sugar levels and is really going to decrease your inflammatory levels in turn. So last but not least, we obviously have our nice stress management category. And so when we talk about our stress management, we want to try to do active and calm. So when we talk about active stress management, choose something, or calm stress management, choose something that you really enjoy doing. You know, if you don't like running and it stresses you out, don't run. Maybe go for a walk. Maybe, you know, dance around your house for 30 minutes a day. Go hiking, get outside, do some yoga. Really just moving your body is important. But on the other side of things, we really want to make sure that we are supporting that mind body, that mental emotional response as well. And so a calm source or a calm type of stress management mixed in with the active is really going to help sort of calm that fight or flight nervous system down and really balance things out. And it also really contributes to your ability to tolerate and handle and respond well to stressful situations in the future. So those things include meditation. So Headspace and Insight Timer are actually both free apps that you can download that are great resources for meditation. If you are a beginner, I definitely would recommend Headspace. And then if you just want a little bit more freedom, maybe you want to do some guided meditation with, you know, for anxiety or to help you fall asleep or for stress or whatever, they have a lot more categories and resources there as well. So those are two great meditation apps. Yoga is also in the Calm as well, depending on what type of yoga you're doing. You can do mantras, and then of course you have, you know, everyone has their own spiritual practices or prayer that they like to do as well. So just another note on stress management and how much it actually influences our heart health. This is a really good quote that I like. So it says, not only can meditation improve your heart functions, but a regular practice can enhance your outlook on life and motivate you to maintain many heart healthy behaviors like following a proper diet, getting adequate sleep, and keeping up regular exercise. So there is a ton of research being done on guided meditation, not just for heart health, but for a lot of other chronic diseases that we have. And we're seeing that the stress response, really getting that stress response in check, has a massive effect on our physical health. And that's because of that stress inflammatory component. If we can really decrease stress, we're also decreasing inflammation, and therefore we can contribute to preventing disease. So it really goes a long way, and makes you feel a lot better as well. So with all of these different lifestyle and nutritional recommendations that we've got going on here, if you are just getting started with this kind of thing and it might feel really overwhelming, I think the biggest take home is that consistency truly is the key. Perfection is never expected. None of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. If someone tries to tell you they are perfect, they are lying. So really just be gentle with yourself and choose one small thing to change every day. And if you continuously do that, before you know it, you're going to have a completely different lifestyle and a completely different health profile as well. So that is definitely something that can come along with a lot of these changes. I am on my last slide, and I think we can open it up to Q&A if you guys are ready.
Yes, that was amazing, Dr. Hatcher. Thank you so much. So our audience members can type in questions on the control panel to your right. One of the questions on here is, what about supplements and immunity, Dr. Hatcher?
Yeah, so I could probably do like a whole weekend seminar on that topic, but I guess with immune supplements, I know right now they're definitely a really big topic of conversation. One of the big things that I could say to you is to work with someone who understands how those different, especially the herbs, how they are going to affect you and your own personal current health. Because you can go on any blog and they'll say like, oh, look at these top herbs for immunity and these top supplements for immunity. Well, once again, there is a very you need to have some kind of balance. So all of those are not right for everyone. Once again, there are a lot of things that can help to support your immunity, but there are a lot of different things that maybe aren't appropriate for a certain individual. I hope that helps. I know it really doesn't, but I can't really make those recommendations.
I also want to point out, people should be very careful at the brand and type of supplements they use, because they're, as you know, they're not all created equally, and they are not also FDA approved. So that's just kind of a mindfulness thing to be aware of when you are purchasing supplements, and you want to make sure you're getting a good quality and of brand when you purchase one.
That's such a great point. Yeah, that honestly is probably the best answer. But I will say, yeah, I mean, that is very important, especially if you're going to spend your money on different supplements. I know people who spend a ridiculous amount of money on different supplements that they see on the internet that can help them with this symptom or that symptom or whatever it looks like. If you're interested in starting different supplements, the quality is the most important thing. You could get some herb that someone was saying works wonderfully for whatever symptom or whatever condition, and if it's a really junky quality, or it's been sitting in a hot warehouse for months or whatever that looks like, and you're just not going to get the benefit from it. So that's a really good point.
Without going into specific brand names, what does a good quality brand of supplements look like to you as a provider when you're recommending these type of things to your patients?
Yes, great question. So what that looks like to me is no unnecessary fillers or typical food sensitivities. The other one is third-party testing. So a lot of these store-bought supplement brands, when they actually get third-party tested randomly. You can find articles all over, the past, I would say, decade or so, people taking like plant-based protein powders, store-bought protein powders, and finding all kinds of, heavy metals and contaminants and all this kind of stuff in there because there is no regulation. These brands that we as providers choose to use, they elect to do their own third-party testing, not only to confirm that, say, it's ginger root that's in there. They will identify the ginger root, but they're also going above and beyond to test for adulterants or different contaminants. So heavy metals, different chemicals, pesticides, whatever it might be. So that is super important. And the bioavailability of these different supplements is also going to be important as well, how they essentially suspend them in whatever it is so that when you are taking them, you can actually efficiently absorb them. So I would say those are probably the top few things that I look for.
Thank you. With all the buzz on CBD oils, I'm still skeptical on these. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't recommend CBD to the clients that I work with, and not because it's not been shown to be beneficial. It absolutely has. But I think that CBD can really be a great add-on to an already healthy nutritional program for the most part, and lifestyle. Once again, no one's perfect, but I think a lot of people, and this may just be how we're trained as a society, like when we don't feel good, we get a pill to make it better, right? I feel like a lot of these natural substances that have come out and there's so much buzz around them, people just think that they're going to fix all their problems. And, it's not going to fix everything. But it can definitely be really supportive for stress and stress management and anxiety. And there's like a whole list of different things that it's been shown to be really great for. On the other side of that, I also think that the quality, once again, with some of the different like quality supplement concerns, I do think it's important to get one that is, from a brand that is very transparent and does their third-party testing and really covers all their bases so that that what you're putting in your body is really just full of the beneficial stuff and not all the junky stuff that can come with that.
Right. So you went into, you discussed physical stress. Can you go into more of what this may look like when you talk about physical stress?
Yeah. Let me go back here. So for me, physical stress, honestly, is anything that does not fall into the category of that mental emotional stress. So that can be, intense exercise. It can be lack of no exercise whatsoever. Lack of sleep is mentioned here, illness or like physical injury. So any sort of chronic disease, even I would consider physical stress. I also do think that the nutritional, like a pro-inflammatory kind of standard American diet can definitely put physical stress on our system as well. Any kind of pollutants, any environmental allergens, anything like that, that's going to essentially come in and try to change the normal actions and function of your physical body, I guess, if that kind of helps a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you discussed the quality of food, but what about quantity?
Yeah, so that looks different for everyone. Back to this, you guys can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so back to this balancing your plate. I really love this for a lot of reasons, but one of them is because based on the amount of food that you want to eat, you can tweak this, right? So this is just looking at your plate in different portions. So your 2/3, 1/3, and then adding in your fat. So if you want to eat more, if you're still hungry, as long as you're eating the right things, I don't think that you are eating too much, right? If you're maybe like really physically active compared to somebody, you're obviously going to want to eat more because you need more energy because you're burning more energy. So this is a really easy way to just kind of figure out how much you want to eat. And if you want to put more on your plate, that's fine. Just keep your portions the same size and you'll still be balancing your blood sugar response as much as possible.
Okay. What type of stress do you see as being causing the most issues or being the most problematic for patients?
Honestly, I see the mental, emotional stress causing some of the biggest like long-standing issues in the people that I work with.
Gotcha. What about frozen vegetables?
Yeah, I think frozen vegetables are great. You don't really leave very much room for things to go bad. I think the quality is still something that's important. So if you're going to do frozen vegetables, try to get organic if you have access to them. But yeah, I don't think frozen fruits or vegetables are an issue. There's actually certain vegetables when frozen, they can increase their nutrient content.
Huh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you touch more on stress and inflammation in the body and what a stress response, quote unquote, may look like?
Yeah. So I guess like what kinds of symptoms can you experience? Is that what they're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, so that can look very different for everyone. And honestly, depending on what part of your body seems to be most affected by big changes, that's usually what I see people's stress response look like. So, for example, take someone who has a very sensitive digestive system. Say like, you know, they may be somebody who like feels all of their emotions in their stomach, or if one little thing changes, they, you know, they might have to run to the bathroom really quick. So like if you're someone who looks like that, that stress response can definitely affect your GI system. If maybe you are someone who stress affects, you know, your good healthy sleep. It can be anything. If we go back to this stress slide, stress can literally cause there are, you know, actual health conditions on here, but most of these are symptoms, right? So if you look at you know, abnormal menstrual cycles, a lot of times for women, that can be like hormone imbalance. You can have like skin issues, acne. You can experience infertility issues because you don't have optimal menstrual cycle. You can gain or lose weight. You can have, once again, skin issues here. Your hair can fall out. You can have cold hands or feet. You can sleep poorly. You can be tired even though you're sleeping well. You can have low sex drive, anxiety and nervousness. I mean, brain fog, the list goes on and on and on. It really is just about how it affects you as an individual.
Yeah. I figured it was a very personal, you know, type of
Yes.
stress. In your clinical practice, what types of patients do you see most in managing within the areas of immunological disease?
Yeah. I typically see a lot of autoimmune um, patients who already have a diagnosis of an autoimmune condition and manage that with their specialist. What we do here is we start to look more at the underlying imbalances. And so I would say that's the bulk of them. The other part of that too is I get a lot of people who come in here who are kind of in that pre-diagnosis stage. Like they don't feel well. They have all these kind of large collection of strange symptoms that they've already gone to their doctor, their lab work has come back normal, but they don't feel normal. So a lot of that can also be very much an autoimmune picture. They just don't have the antibodies or the lab work to go along with it to actually get that diagnosis and start getting whatever sort of recommended treatment from their physician it may be that they should be getting. So I do more of the autoimmune patients.
Okay, have a couple more questions. So any specific nutritional recommendations for your autoimmune patients?
Everyone is very different. And you could have, once again, you could have 10 people come in here with the same exact autoimmune diagnosis, and they would all leave with a different plan, because truly everyone, when we start to look at underlying root causes, we look at the gut and gut health, which is a big factor with any autoimmune condition, but it's very personalized. I would say if you want one recommendation that I don't even like making blanket statements, but I will make a blanket statement for this. I would say look into completely avoiding gluten. Cut gluten out from literally every aspect of your life. And that, I think, could be a really good start for most people who have a diagnosed autoimmune condition.
Thanks. So one more question. What are your thoughts on the use of statins?
Ooh. So I want to preface this by saying that in North Carolina, we are not considered primary care physicians. We're not regulated as such. And obviously, along with that, we don't prescribe pharmaceuticals. So I think that statins can be a good option for somebody who maybe is not willing to make these lifestyle and nutritional changes, or for someone who maybe has something like a familial cholesterol disorder. So someone who has super, super high cholesterol levels and they need something to control that. I also think that if somebody is on a statin, then the nutrient deficiencies that come along with being on a medication like that should always be addressed as well. But I do think that there is a time and a place for all medications. And I think that they should just not be used on their own. I think that they should also be used with these different preventive strategies that come along with the nutritional and the lifestyle aspects of things. Because when we talk about high cholesterol, if it's not in a genetic standpoint, I mean, it really is a disease of lifestyle, right? So we should really be kind of focusing on that first and foremost, and then managing it from a medical standpoint as needed.
Thank you, Dr. Hatcher, and thank you for your great, fantastic presentation today. And thank you for the audience for listening to today's webinar. Don't forget to tune in a couple of weeks on March the 2nd with rheumatologist Dr. Kassab, who will also be discussing the immune system and autoimmune diseases from 6:30 to 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Also, just if you would take a couple of moments after we conclude today's webinar to fill out that 4-question survey, that's going to help us better serve our community. And thank you again. This is Lauren Dunlap for Advocacy and Awareness for Immune Disorders Association, and we hope you have a warm and healthy day. Thank you so much.